Well, I'm feeling ambitious, so let's go ahead and take the next step. I have my cabinet doors painted. Paint's fully set, it's cured, ready to go. And I've got my hinges here. Now I'm gonna be using a concealed hinge. What that means is that when it's closed, you're not gonna see any like the metal ribbing like you'd have on the back of a door or anything like that. These are typical cabinet concealed hinges. The ones I'm using are slow close. So there's a little spring in here that stops this from closing really fast so that when it does close, it'll slowly kind of draw itself in. That way your cabinet doors don't slam. And then specifically the ones I've chosen are a 1/2 inch overlay. When you buy concealed hinges, you have to look at how far the door is going to overlay the face frame when it's closed and make sure that you have clearance for that. In my little nook, I have a very small amount of space, about a little under 3/4 of an inch. So a 1/2 inch overlay is going to allow that door to overlay the face frame by 1/2 an inch and still meet my clearance and allow me to open it and close it without it hitting the side of the framing. So this is what I need to do, or what I need to use to get this set up correctly. However, installing concealed hinges is something I've never done before and takes a little bit of kind of know-how and understanding, or the proper tool. So I purchased a concealed hinge jig, and we're gonna experiment, see how this goes and how this works. So I'm gonna do a little bit of reading, and when I come back, I'll give you a brief overview of how a concealed hinge jig works, and then we'll use it on my doors, and if everything goes well, I'll have cabinet doors installed on the washer and dryer tonight. So one of my favorite tools is the pocket hole jig I have from Kreg. I love the way it's designed, I love the thought that went into it, and this is going to be very, very similar from the look of it. So the concealed hinge jig that Kreg sells comes in a couple pieces. You've got the main base, which has your offset measurements for how far into the door the cup that this concealed hinge is going to sit in will be. This takes a round hole in the middle of the door for this to sit. You have the drill guide itself. You have your actual drill bit. And then there's this little guy, and this is a depth stop. It allows you to set how far down into the piece this is going to go. Now for a standard concealed hinge, you need it to go 12 millimeters in, which is going to be the lowest setting on this. So essentially what ends up happening is you pull this little cup out, you slide the bit through, pop this on top, use the enclosed Allen wrench to tighten it down, and then when you're actually using the drill, it's going to allow it to come in and then stop it when it hits the top of this base. You'll get the perfect depth hole, perfectly lined up where you need it to be. This also has two little guides here and here that allow you to set your pilot holes for the screws that will hold this hinge in place. That's these two holes right there. So really cool design, really nicely laid out. I like it a lot. Let's see how it works. So the jig is all assembled. This little cup snaps into the base. You want to make sure that that's secure. And I've got my offsets set to 3 millimeter, which matches what my hinge is asking for in the instructions. And what that does is it turns these little gray cams so that when this sits against the edge, that hole will end up 3 millimeters in from the edge to allow that hinge to sit properly and give you the proper offset. So the next bit that I'm going to figure out is just how far up and down I want these to be. I think I'm going to run them about, probably 5-6 inches up the door, because this is a 36-inch door and I want to spread the weight a bit. And I'll do the same thing from the top to make sure that they're nice and even. And then, yeah, we'll screw them in. Here's the end result of our efforts, I guess. So I've got my hole placed. It's exactly the right depth. That drops right down inside and can be screwed in. And then really all there is to do is get it lined up on the face frame. The face frame goes right up against that guide right there. And then there are screws on the inside of this hinge that allow you to adjust it so you can make the door pivot a little bit, get it level and balanced. So I'm gonna get the other side cut and then probably do the other door as well. And then we'll bring it inside. One thing to note about this too is I took a moment to make sure I had the orientation on the doors properly set. and knew where my hinge side was. That bar is not exactly in the center, so I wanted to make sure that when I do this, the doors will sit in such a way that the bars line up across the center of the opening that I've got. Well, just that simple. Hinges are installed. I've got the doors lined up so that they'll close evenly, even though that the floor's a little bit sloped here. So you can see with the slow close that it will kind of cushion itself on the way in, and voila, we have cabinet doors. So pretty simple. The Hinge jig costs about 20 bucks or so. I'll include a link down below in the description, as well as a link to the hinges that I'm using for this, in case you want to do a project like this in your own house. And as always, we'll end it with a dad joke. So how do you tell the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? Well, one you'll see later. The other only shows up after a while. Have a good night.